Welcome back to Movie Minute Recaps. Today, I'll recap the mystery crime film Enola Holmes from 2020. Spoilers ahead, so proceed with caution. The Holmes family home is located on the outskirts of England. The father passed away years ago, and the older sons left soon after. So now only the mother, Eudora, the youngest daughter, Enola, and a housekeeper remain. Enola's name is Alone, spelled backward, as Eudora loves word games and wants Enola to be independent. Enola has never ventured beyond the woods around the house, never seen the city or a town, but that's fine because Eudora has taught her everything she needs: science, literature, sports, and even self-defense. Enola and Eudora are very close, but Eudora keeps some secrets, like having secret meetings with other women in the house. On Enola's 16th birthday, she wakes up to find her mother has left during the night, leaving behind a strange gift: a box containing a book on the language of flowers, a decoder, and some painted cards. Enola heads to the train station to meet her brothers, Mycroft and Sherlock, the famous detective, hoping they can help her find answers. The brothers don't recognize her at first, but after introductions, things become awkward. Mycroft harshly criticizes the state of the house and Enola's lack of proper manners, while Sherlock examines their mother's room and concludes there was no foul play. Eudora left on her own and doesn't plan to return. Later, Enola overhears her brothers talking while playing billiards. She learns that the house has been Mycroft's since their father died, and Eudora only had it for 16 years to raise Enola. Mycroft hadn't seen Sherlock in months, as Sherlock never cared about the family. He's only now involved because there's a mystery. Mycroft believes the proper thing to do is send Enola to a boarding school to learn how to be a proper lady. The next day, Miss Harrison, a stern teacher hired by Mycroft to reshape Enola, arrives. Enola can't stand her. Miss Harrison wants to change her entire personality. And when Enola responds to her condescension, Harrison slaps her. Enola begs Mycroft for mercy, but he remains stubborn, so she turns to Sherlock for help. He claims he can't do anything, because the law says she's Mycroft's ward. Hurt, Enola calls him out for washing his hands of the issue and mentions he's always ignored how Mycroft is cruel to their mother. Seeking a distraction, Enola climbs a tree to sketch. Sherlock joins her and shares a childhood memory Enola doesn't recall. She had a pine cone wrapped in wool, named Dash, that she carried everywhere like a dog. Enola calls out Sherlock again, saying he never visits, and when he offers work as an excuse, she points out he never writes either. Sherlock suggests that Eudora left a mystery, which frustrates Enola, but he advises her not to be emotional if she wants to uncover the truth. That evening, Enola re-examines her gift to find the answer. Since Eudora loved word games, Enola rearranges the letters in her message and realizes her mother wants her to look at one of her paintings. Hidden behind the canvas, she finds an envelope with money and another painted card. Enola sees this as a sign to take the matter seriously, so she sneaks out in the middle of the night, dressed in Sherlock's old clothes. The next morning, she arrives at the train station and notices the Tewkesbury family searching for their son. They don't board with her, but their employee, Linthorn, does. When Enola finds an empty carriage, she's surprised to discover she's not alone. A young man, the Viscount Tewkesbury, emerges from a bag. Tewkesbury paid a porter to sneak him aboard to escape his family, but Enola doesn't care. She doesn't want him to interfere with her mission, so she kicks him out after warning him about Linthorn. However, Tewkesbury returns moments later, frightened because he saw Linthorn checking all the carriages. Enola decides she'll leave instead, but she's barely a few steps away when she hears Linthorn attacking Tewkesbury. Feeling guilty for not doing the right thing, she returns and strikes Linthorn with his cane, stopping him from throwing Tewkesbury off the train. Enola saves him just in time, and they run through the corridors together. Realizing there's no escape, they jump off the train when it passes a grassy area. Meanwhile, Sherlock searches the house for clues, believing Enola's disappearance is part of the mystery. The housekeeper calls him out for thinking like Enola did, and, after mentioning the girl left some money, asks Sherlock not to abandon her again since Mycroft is contacting the police. Back with the teenagers, they agree to travel to London together. When it's time to camp for the night, Tewkesbury uses the foraging skills his late father taught him to find edible plants. As they bond over their strange families and shared fear of living a life that doesn't suit them, Enola cuts Tewkesbury's hair to make him harder to identify. The next morning, they hitch a ride to London, where they part ways. Enola, overwhelmed by the city and the protesters on the streets chanting for or against the reform bill allowing women to vote, is further unsettled by the signs offering a reward for Tewkesbury. She decides the first step is to acquire a disguise, opting for proper lady clothes, since she knows how Mycroft would have described her to the police. Meanwhile, Sherlock declines the case of Tewkesbury's disappearance, choosing instead to search for his mother and sister. Ignoring Mycroft's protests, Sherlock finds a clue in the news about two boys jumping off a train. After acquiring lady clothes and renting a room in London, Enola begins the next phase of her plan. She publishes cryptic messages in the newspaper personal ads, then visits the only address she's ever seen Eudora write to, a tea house. Inside, she hears strange noises from the first floor and goes upstairs to investigate. This leads her to Edith's Jiu-Jitsu Academy for Women. Edith had been Enola's first teacher, and though Enola doesn't remember her, she realizes Edith is one of the women who attended Eudora's secret meetings. Edith refuses to share any details about Eudora's work, so Enola tries to force it out of her, but fails the special corkscrew move, allowing Edith to easily defeat her. Before leaving, Enola notices a box of dynamite with a logo matching one from her house during Eudora's secret meetings. Recalling some odd words she overheard during those meetings, Enola rearranges the letters and uncovers an address, which she quickly visits. The door she finds has a purple ribbon on its lock, similar to those worn by the women at the meetings. Enola sneaks in through the window and discovers a lab, pamphlets, and boxes of explosives, realizing that Eudora is leading a radical suffragette group. On her way out, she's attacked by Linthorne, who pushes her inside a bucket of water to make her confess Tewkesbury's whereabouts. Since he doesn't believe her when she says she doesn't know, Enola pretends to drown, then attacks Linthorne when he's distracted. The two of them begin to fight, but when Enola fails the corkscrew again, Linthorne pushes her into the lab and tries to stab her with a knife. Enola's corset saves her from death, allowing her to use the chemicals on the table to ignite the explosives and escape. Now knowing Linthorne is in London, Enola feels compelled to warn Tewkesbury. Disguised as a widow, she visits his family estate and claims to be Sherlock's assistant. Tewkesbury's mother almost believes her, but unfortunately, Inspector Lestrade, a close friend of Sherlock's from Scotland Yard, calls out her lie. They argue, prompting Tewkesbury's mother to kick them out. Once outside, Enola asks the gardener about Tewkesbury's favorite places and pays him to swap clothes with her. Meanwhile, Sherlock tracks down Edith, using letters Eudora hid in her chimney. Edith tells him Enola is fine, but refuses to share more information, noting that Sherlock doesn't understand the importance of their work. When Sherlock dismisses politics as boring, Edith calls him out, accusing him of being just another man, uninterested in changing a world that suits him. Mycroft is also having a meeting. Lestrade confirms he saw Enola, and Mycroft promises a reward if he finds her. Enola heads into the forest and finds Tewkesbury's treehouse, where he's left fake clues to confuse his family about his destination. However, she also discovers a real clue in a book about his true location, but her investigation is interrupted by Tewkesbury's grandmother, the Dowager. She leads Enola out of the forest, proudly speaking about protecting England's glory and ideals. She calls Enola a new thinker, noting that her son and grandson are the same. Next, Enola goes to Covent Garden, where she finds Tewkesbury selling flowers. She warns him about Linthorne and takes him with her, unaware that posters with her face are now plastered around the streets. Once they reach the hotel, Enola tells Tewkesbury she found clues in the forest suggesting his father's death wasn't an accident, but a murder. She explains that they're now trying to kill him too, driven by greed. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted by Lestrade, who has come after the seamstress Enola bought her dress from, reported her in exchange for the reward. After throwing a teapot at Lestrade, Enola drags Tewkesbury to her room, where they try to barricade the door with a chest. Realizing it won't hold for long, Enola sacrifices herself and urges Tewkesbury to escape through the window, insisting that his life is far more important than her being sent to a boarding school. Tewkesbury escapes safely, while Enola is captured and sent to Mycroft, who takes her money and berates her, leaving her in tears. At the boarding school, Enola struggles to fit in, despising every class that teaches her how to be a proper lady and secure a husband. One afternoon, Sherlock visits Enola and tells her he's found Edith and the lab, but not Eudora. He also knows about her involvement in the Tewkesbury case. However, the real reason he came is to give Enola her old dash, which Eudora had kept under her pillow. This proves to Enola that her mother does care. Before leaving, Sherlock leaves her the day's paper, which mentions the Lords voting soon. Enola starts to see a clue when she's interrupted by a delivery from Mycroft. A giant, heavy basket. When she opens it, she finds Tewkesbury inside, come to save her. Enola hides in the basket, and Tewkesbury sneaks her out of the room, and after meeting Tewkesbury outside, they flee in Harrison's car. They were supposed to return to London, but Enola decides they need to take a risk and confront Tewkesbury's family. She believes the culprit is his uncle, who wants Tewkesbury's seat at the voting because, like his father, the son plans to vote in favor of the reform. Night has fallen by the time they make it to the mansion. Surprisingly, there's nobody around, which means they're expected. Linthorn suddenly appears and opens fire with a rifle, so the duo hides behind statues. When Linthorn comes closer, Enola jumps on him to attack him, but Linthorn knocks her out. Tewkesbury attacks him next, but also fails, so Linthorn gets ready to kill him by asphyxiation. Fortunately, Enola then wakes up and attacks again, finally pulling off the corkscrew move that causes Linthorn to fall and hit his head against the banister, dying after saying he works for England. At that moment, the real culprit shows up. The Dowager. She killed her son, and now wants her grandson gone too, in order to protect the country's traditions. The Dowager shoots Tewkesbury, and Enola cries over his body, believing him to be dead. But actually, he's just fine. Tewkesbury had put on a piece of armor from one of the statues, while Enola was fighting Linthorn. Seeing herself surrounded, the Dowager surrenders. The next day, Sherlock visits Lestrade to tell him he's discovered the Dowager is the culprit, which he figured out by following clues in the newspapers. Lestrade informs him that Enola has already solved the case, making Sherlock proud. Meanwhile, Enola receives an offer from Tewkesbury and his mother to stay with them, but she declines, as she must continue searching for Eudora. She does, however, accept the reward money. After promising Tewkesbury they'll meet again in the future, Enola buys a newspaper and finds a cryptic message signed Mother. She quickly guesses it's a trap set by Sherlock, but decides to go to the meeting place anyway, keeping her distance while watching her two brothers wait for her. Mycroft, upset that Tewkesbury's vote helped pass the reform, quickly gives up and accepts Sherlock's offer to make Enola his ward before asking to leave. As they leave, Sherlock notices Dash on a nearby statue and realizes his sister has been watching them all along. When Enola returns to the new hotel she's staying at, she finds a huge surprise waiting for her. Eudora is there. The two embrace, and Eudora explains that she didn't leave because she didn't care, but because she wanted to make a better world for her daughter. Though she'll soon leave again to continue fighting, she tells Enola she's proud of everything she's accomplished. Enola is at peace with this, knowing she's found her own purpose, just like her mother and brothers did. She'll be a detective and a finder of lost souls.